We're back in session. This is the world's most bullish podcast brought to you by Mr. All In, aka the $1 trillion man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the people's champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the excellence of execution, and surprise, surprise, pod number 84. She's nowhere to be seen, Mrs. No Show. No Show.
Just gonna say, when do we drop her from the title, from like the credits at the start? Or when do we drop her from that talk, or is it just part of the gimmick now?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a thing now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Most people that listen, most people that listen literally think it's a girl, and that they're waiting for them to say it at some point because they haven't ever listened to an episode with her on it. So they have no clue who we are talking about.
I think there are 3 episodes which you have to find out who Miss No Show is.
Yeah, she. All I can say is great tits.
Yeah. Well, I think we are fulfilling our quota of 25% transgender, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, we've got a transgender on the board.
25% Down syndrome.
Yeah. 25% homosexuality. We've got everything.
All in one neat little bundle.
Yeah.
We're like so diverse.
That's it.
And as we know, diversity is everything. Fuck quality. We want diversity here.
Mrs. No Show, you are still part of the show so that we can continue to, what is it? The ECG? Not ECG, it's something, isn't it?
ESG.
ESG, that's it. Yeah.
Don't even know
We're
what
getting our ESG points. No.
But woke bollocks. I think I just know it as.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we need someone that is vegan as well. Oh, they're vegan. Yeah, they can be vegan.
Yeah.
Environmental, social, and governance.
There we go. ESG.
So Miss No Show can fill all our criteria for that.
Got to get rid of the log burner. Log burners are bad. They pollute the environment. You have to use the mains electricity that comes from the government. You're not allowed to use it.
That's not good. You have to freeze to death.
That is also an option.
Only then will you be a good boy.
Yeah, and don't have kids. Don't have kids.
No,
that's the worst thing you can do for the planet.
But you need to sponsor to bring in a few immigrants because we need that average wage to go down, so the debts aren't so high.
Yeah, yeah. Because when your kids that aren't going to appear now because you're caring about the planet, they're not going to have anyone to pack the chickens, and your kids would want more higher wages. So let's get some immigrants in. They'll do it for basically free. Yeah. And if they ever ask for more money, they can fucking freeze to death as well, the little shit. This has been a sponsored podcast from the Conservative Party.
We would never get sponsored. You know, if the sponsor wants to go out of business and become insolvent, then yeah, join.
Yeah, we might get some some nice Bitcoin companies at some point. They don't give a shit. But anyone outside of our space, we've got no chance. We're more likely to get locked up in a Romanian jail for months on end with no charge. That's more likely to be our outcomes, especially mine.
Yeah. I was going to say we're still paying. Well, I suppose you have paid tax when you bought your house, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm paying ridiculous amounts of tax. It's the one thing I make sure I do. But like what we see, we saw it with Martin Shkreli. We're seeing it with Andrew Tate now. They arrest you based on one thing that they think you've done wrong. But really, what they do that for is so they can get access to all your emails, all your text messages, everything for decades. And then they go through that with a fine-tooth comb and try and find any old bollocks crime. What happened to Martin Shkreli? He got arrested initially for hiking up the price of an age drug, but they ended up doing him and getting him 7 years in prison for a violation of the securities law that happened 10, 15 years ago that no one was complaining about. There was no victims, but he didn't do it by the book, and they went, that is a securities violation. Boom, 7 years. So that's what I imagine is going to happen to me at some point.
Sounds like he needed more democracy.
Yeah, there's nothing like fucking democracy than 7 years in prison. And the entire mainstream media making him the most hated guy in America.
Yeah. And it's not being covered by the fact that he hasn't really done anything, or the law.
He was enemy number one after bunking up the price of that drug. So he didn't have to do anything. Everyone hated him because of that one bit.
Yeah. Oh, I was talking about Tate.
Oh, Tate. Everyone hates him because what's he? He's sexist. He's homophobic. He's seedy. What else can we throw in there? Yes. Whatever buzzwords you want to put in.
Yeah,
it's mainly misogynist, yeah. But then they're doing him for human trafficking at the moment. But all that's happening is that there's women listed in the prosecution charges that they're trying to prosecute him on, and they're coming out doing TikToks and various videos going, I want to be removed from that case. Everything I did was consensual. I made a lot of money. The Tate brothers were very kind to us. So I do not want to be part of the prosecution. And they're sending in their statements, and they're just getting thrown in the bin, and they're being left in the prosecution. They're going, well, we're not going to be a witness. We are not on their side. We don't think they've done anything wrong. And there's just, as each day goes by, there's another girl that comes forward to go, yeah, I worked with Tate. He was great. I made loads of money. He made loads of money. They're great. They're all consensual.
His ex-girlfriend came out as well, didn't she? Saying, yeah, it's all good. Wish I could say the same with some ex-girlfriends.
Anyway, should we get to the agenda?
Yeah, let's.
So here we are having the EU lawmakers. This is quite a come down from what we were just talking about. But they vote to impose strict capital requirements on banks holding Bitcoin and the dirty word crypto. So banks would be allowed to hold 2% of capital in Bitcoin, but they're required to have €1 in capital for every €1 in cryptocurrency. So this is a whole story. It's on Bitcoin Magazine. And so they are allowing banks to kind of offer crypto. Really, it's going to be Bitcoin services. But hilariously, they're going, oh, you have to back this one-to-one though. And wouldn't it be nice if they held fiat backed by one-to-one with something, right? You know, remember the days where it used to be back one-to-one with a nice shiny rock called gold, and then they just went off the radar and just started printing it. And so it's essentially backed by completely nothing. But they're going, no, you can hold Bitcoin, but you have to have a euro in response, which I guess it on the good side, if I'm trying to be nice to them here, at least it does stop an FTX happening, because it does mean the banks aren't. But I would prefer, like, I want to make sure that they really do have the crypto or the Bitcoin as well. I don't want them to have any weird paper version of it that they're getting from someone else. It's like, you need to hold the Bitcoin that you've sold. That's what I'd want to see. I don't care about the euros or whatever this sits behind. That's just going to go to zero anyway.
The general rule should be, it has to be backed by an asset. So if they get audited at any point, you can show evidence of that asset is there. So they audit all the accounts. They can go, oh yeah, there's these 20,000 people. There's X amount of Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever shit coins are in there. And here are assets which can be accessed at any point and are segregated in this way. So it's almost a bit like, I suppose, a bit of a PCI, kind of like DSS structure, and that your funds aren't going anywhere and they're protected against any kind of like admin pulling them out as well. It just seems, madness, and like backing it by the euro. It's just like, I suppose
doing this, surely it means that they have to then purchase Bitcoin themselves, so number goes up.
Oh yeah. Well, technically they should have had to, if they're going to offer Bitcoin service, they have to buy the Bitcoin, right? But this is an extra. It's an extra disincentive though, because So just imagine, like, you're selling your Bitcoin, right? But then you get paid for the Bitcoin, which this is for obviously the EU, so they're storing in euros. You have to leave those euros there. You can't, which is normally what would happen in a bank. Once they've sold you the asset, if they're going to hold it for you, right, fine. I want my Bitcoin 1-to-1. I don't really care whether there's a euro there, but they're making they have to leave the euro there as well. They can't take it off into the bank and kind of do the investment, loan it out, do all that good stuff. They're forcing them to leave it here, which just makes Bitcoin as a proposition for banks less attractive. And obviously then also limiting it to 2% of capital. They're really going, look, we know there's a demand for this. We know people want to buy Bitcoin and hold Bitcoin in their bank account.
Yeah.
So we're going to allow it to happen, but we're not going to just let this dam burst open. We're going to restrict it to 2%. And make sure it's not really profitable for the bank, because any Bitcoin they sell, they have to keep the money that they've received for the Bitcoin in an account that matches 1-to-1.
So it's all fine and dandy, because if you think about what's happened lately with, say, FTX, whilst it's on the exchange, it's ensuring that crypto's there. But when someone withdraws it, does it still have to be back, because they are no longer in custody of that Bitcoin or cryptocurrency? Therefore, surely they don't have to back it anymore, because that money could then be, or rather, cryptocurrency could then be sold at another exchange or held on another exchange. So therefore, you'd end up with double counting.
Yeah, good point. So when the customer sells, they could sell.
Or withdraws.
Or withdraws, yeah.
It does mention that they'll be required to hold a euro of own capital for every euro they hold in crypto. So it's the they hold is the key word there. So I think if they no longer hold it, they don't have to.
You know, I think it's most Bitcoin is not stored in an exchange, is it? Whereas I hazard a guess that most crypto is.
Yeah,
because
Bitcoins are like 80% on exchanges.
Yeah, you're looking for a pump, aren't you? With a
and they don't know what they're doing. It's stupidity, isn't it? They don't know what they're doing.
Well, they're gambling. They're waiting for it to pump to sell. Whereas Bitcoin, I think the majority use cases is someone's buying it in order to keep.
Yeah.
It's for generational wealth. Yeah, we're not looking for short-term gains. But
do you see it as a positive though? Because let's say, the bank does it, people may trust buying Bitcoin at a bank rather than an exchange because they're familiar with a bank. Just playing devil's advocate.
It could be a fantastic onboarding, but only if they allow withdrawals. Because if they allowed you to withdraw to your hardware wallet, then this is fantastic. Because suddenly now people with a normal bank account, if Bitcoin just becomes an option on their screen, that is obviously, as we know, onboarding Bitcoin is the hardest thing, is to get them through the KYC, AML, all that kind of bollocks. So they've already done that with their bank and they're in, and Bitcoin shows up. That's huge, really huge. And that, like you said, all the trust of, I don't want to go to a Bitcoin exchange, I'm a bit scared. It's like, whatever your bank of choice is, it's fucking here. You can buy some Bitcoin, but I would only say this is positive if the button called withdraw is sat there. If that button is sat there, then we're all good. But I can almost guarantee it won't be. So then buying Bitcoin through your bank will be the worst decision of your life, because you will never, ever get access to it. You will only be able to trade it, right? They're going to incentivize you just to sell it, because when the time comes, they're going to take custody of it themselves. They're going to withhold it from you. So you have to take custody. So it could be really positive.
Yeah, or somehow, of course, the bank will make some money from the whole transaction, because that's what they're there to do. Banks are there to loan.
Or they'll sell it under your nose.
Yeah.
We've seen FTX do it, and this doesn't really stop it. They're like, oh yeah, we've got these euros instead. Therefore, you can have your 13 grand, but it was, it is worth 40, but it was worth 13 when you bought it. will be the cop out. So I think you'll see a lot of misuse if this does come in, but I think the assets have got to be back 1-to-1 if it's stored on the exchange, and I think that's the rule. And I think it's any kind of auditing and hopefully automated auditing sorts that out. But I think the other point in my mind is, will this push peer-to-peer? So find, like almost a bit of a dating website, find me a miner. And it's like you pair it with a miner. If you have to be fucking KYC, you have to be KYC'd, and it literally goes, it puts it, you set up the exchange, you go, I want to buy 1 Bitcoin, you put the, was it 18 grand, and you basically wait till that's clarified, and then it switches over. The miner gets his money, you get your Bitcoin, bang out. And I think that's the next stage of this comes in, where it's basically...
You really should clarify, you're talking Bitcoin miner, MINER, not MINOR, right? You're gonna get us cancelled with language like that.
I was gonna say it's not Miss No Show. We're not getting our diversity points. This is Dr. Evil 10% who talks business and loves inflation. Not miners.
And miners, yeah.
Yeah, and miners. You want to be linked with miners. Okay.
But you kind of think about this. I think it does open the door for that, like that kind of peer-to-peer with miners with an E, where you have that kind of like escrow account. So it's like the whole purpose of it is you pay a slight fee in order for them to securely move it across between you, so none of you lose out. And then that means that you probably have to withdraw it within a certain time frame, therefore it doesn't have to be backed. And it's all gravy then, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a question for you. Would you pay more for some virgin miner Bitcoin?
No, because I'm not fucking collectibles, otherwise I'd be collecting NFTs.
Yeah, it's always an interesting question, that, because in a weird way, I think I potentially would, but then it breaks Bitcoin's fungibility a little bit, because a Bitcoin is just a Bitcoin. But
so you'd pay for fresh Bitcoin as opposed to
that's never been transacted, fresh off the chain, in that block reward directly from Satoshi,
off the bone, off the chain.
Yeah. I just want to keep saying virgin miner as many times as I can. But
I think that's like the consumer and everyone thinking about that. I mean, the one advantage is, well, I suppose it's still marked by your KYC in the first point, isn't it? It's still being bought at some point. So
in your example where we're doing peer-to-peer, right? So I'm just behind the scenes.
But I'm saying on this kind of platform, I think to get around it, you would have to KYC the people.
Oh, fuck this platform.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, you got your illegal platforms which will run if they try and clamp down on Bitcoin ownership. But this is a case where they're kind of going, oh, we want this euro-backed thing. You just go, fuck it. We'll have a direct-to-miner where we can just trade it and both people get KYC'd in order to buy it. So it's basically Coinbase, but without Coinbase buying and then selling on. You're introducing someone to someone who can sell you from source.
Yeah, in reality, it doesn't really matter. It's just I would love to have some Bitcoin that I mine myself in reality, but
it's like having fresh notes, isn't it? Like fresh £10, £20, £50 notes. They're exactly the same. They're crisp, exactly. The fresh.
Yeah, but don't you just feel like this is just made up when you have a fresh note?
Oh, yeah.
Well, it feels like Monopoly money. Yeah,
I was going to say it's like buying a new Monopoly game. You can do that instead and go, I've held some fresh notes. It's pretty much the same.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting question because I've heard people numerous times going, "Oh, we're potentially going to sell freshly mined Bitcoin, but at like a 2 to 5% premium," and there's people going, "Yeah, I do that." But in reality, you're just doing it because in reality, you might pay more for Bitcoin that's mined on block 69. Like, it's just for the lols, right?
Yeah, just for the lols, definitely.
But it's also going back to that consumer mindset, and these people truly aren't free of the matrix.
Maybe, but come on, we're allowed to have jokes and memes. That's all we're doing. It's behind the scenes.
It's expensive though. Think of those extra sats you get for that 5%, especially when you're the $1 trillion man.
Equally, though, I don't know. Once you've got it, it's tainted, isn't it? Because you can't then send that on to somebody because you'll be then selling second-hand Bitcoin.
This is like your Pokemon card, though, right? You keep it in a case, and you just put it on a mantle, right? You put your address on a mantle, and you go, "Here's this like value of Bitcoin." It's like it's a virgin miner. It's fucking This Bitcoin has never moved. It got taken off the blockchain from a virgin miner and is just sat there now. And you just put it in a little case. You put the little ledger that it's on, sat there, and you go, it's never going to move. This is virgin miner.
Probably jack off over every night.
Yeah, it's in a waterproof case.
And that was Pod 84. Story number 1, Pod 84, and the 4Bs were no more.
But you got to think that this kind of story, it comes from Christine Lagarde. Everyone knows that she's a well, actually, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say she's a fucktard, but then again, I suppose she is just on with the team, isn't she?
Yeah, she's just corrupt.
Yeah, she's just corrupt.
Yeah, she's relatively intelligent, but yeah, she's a criminal and is bought and paid off.
Yeah. And she purposely misunderstands inflation to make everyone feel safer.
What was her line?
It was, how do you know that inflation's going to come down? And it will. But how? Just wait.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that's not how inflation fucking works, you retard. And it's like, I didn't know. And it's like, you did.
Of course you did. Anyway, talking about miners, not virgin miners, this one. This is persecuted miners. The sexy kind. No, these are the unsexy kind. So we go to Paraguay for this one. And so we were talking about, miners and stuff last week and going, how do you kind of stop it? And we were talking about the US and, in my mindset at the time, I thought, they could just ban it like they did in China. But this is a much smarter way of doing it, right? So in Paraguay, what's come out over the last week is they've just hugely increased the price of energy, but specifically for miners, for Bitcoin miners. And so they have to pay a much more expensive rate than anyone else would. There's no choice to not do it. So hence they're going to.
It depends how cheap the electricity is, because I think we found a chart for how cheap it was across the world, but I can't remember what that is. So,
I guess ultimately they're still trying to stop the gains and any gains that they're making through stopping them to get in normal electricity prices, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've raised it to an extent where essentially mining Bitcoin in Paraguay is no longer profitable.
But there's a purpose for it. So it's the fact that their electricity is probably quite cheap, so making a guess. But then also in terms of GDP ranking in the world, they're 98th. So they're surrounded by such powerhouses as Bolivia, Sudan, Libya, Estonia, Nepal. So do you
think they're doing this for like legitimate reasons? They think the Bitcoin miners are using too much energy?
No, it's not for energy reason. It's to stop it being taken as a currency. So they're trying to discourage it any way which they can. Yeah. So El Salvador 104th, Paraguay 98th. So that says to me that it's a threat and they need to limit its use. So therefore they're doing this. But then there's also a second angle, the IMF. So I had a bit of a Google on this. On November 21st, 2022, the Executive Board of the International Monetary Fund approved a 2-year policy coordination instrument for Paraguay. A 2-year policy coordination instrument is an interesting way to say a loan. Against this backdrop, the authority's economic program under the PCI will be focused on policies to ensure macroeconomic stability, foster economic growth, and enhance social protection. The PCI is underpinned by strong macroeconomic policy plans and will support ongoing initiatives aimed at implementation of a broad structural reform agenda. So that's November. So that's 2 months ago. Then we go again. We've got an article. Actually, actually, I think this is 2020. IMF Executive Board approves a US dollar value of 274 million emergency support to Paraguay to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So number 2 off IMF. Number 3, IMF reaches staff level agreement on Paraguay's policy coordination instrument October 13th. So this is a precursor. So you kind of go, they're owned by the IMF. And the IMF are going, that kind of like bottom 100, we're not going to let them go the way of El Salvador. And that's how I see this article. Immediately when I read it, I went, IMF forgot them. You could just tell they own them. It's like Argentina. Argentina started, selling Bitcoin ETFs through their banks. And then bang, IMF go, we've just lent you money. Literally within a month, it was like disallowed.
Yeah, it's nuts, right? Because I'm reading this article, and yeah, they need to sell the energy, right? So the Bitcoin miners at the moment, obviously, and as you just said, Paraguay are a struggling country. They need all the money they can get. They need to have their economy liquid and just money moving around. So Bitcoin coming in, suddenly there's a load more requirement for energy. So they want to spend an absolute shit ton for this energy. They're essentially going, nope. We put the price up to such an extent, it's now preventative or prohibitive to even bother switching a miner on, because the amount of Bitcoin you earn is going to be less than what the energy costs. So all that really happens is you destroy an industry in Paraguay. And now that energy doesn't get bought. They'll probably just burn it off into the sky instead. There's no taxes that are going to get paid. You know, these Bitcoin miners would be creating jobs, paying taxes. Now, obviously, they're looking long term, and the IMF have probably informed them that long term Bitcoin is not a good thing for you as a government, because you want to control the money. And if this Bitcoin thing really takes off, you're going to lose control of the money. And then we're all really, really fucked. So you're going to have to take the L on this Bitcoin miner revenue in exchange for keeping on a fiat standard.
For me, when they do things like this, it's similar to China and them obviously banning Bitcoin. It's like they're purposefully shooting themselves in the foot. And it'll come back to haunt them later on, and it'll look like such a dumb move that they did. They had the opportunity to, as you say, make gains out of the taxes that they'll be receiving. The employment rate will go, the unemployment rate will go down. As we've seen with El Salvador, the economy and the atmosphere in El Salvador has gone from a drug-ridden, gang-ridden country to one that's not. But it seems like they don't want any of those good things, and they'll stick to what they've been doing.
Yeah. So I'll go one further. I was just going to say, I'll go one further than that. So you, actually, I can remember what I'm saying, but El Salvador, quickly on that point, they owe the IMF some money, and there's always speculation, obviously unfounded, because they paid it off. They paid off the loan to the IMF. But with this, it's just, I just look at it and just think they don't want it to take over. And if Bitcoin really didn't matter, which is what they keep on saying, they wouldn't be doing things like this.
Yeah, you're right.
It just kind of like makes me more bullish. It makes me more backed in my beliefs that Bitcoin is the way. When you see things like this with China, when you see some of the stuff which they come out with, just in the press or at what's that place called, Davos, you kind of go, these people don't want it. It's not in their interests, but it's in our interests.
Yeah, the more they fight, the better it is. And it's like these telltale signs. And, obviously we are a Bitcoin-only pod. Looking for these types of stories should make you more and more bullish.
And
if there's no reason, then they wouldn't be doing it, right?
If someone is a no-coiner, or I don't know what's worse, a shit coiner is worse. A no-coiner or a shit coiner, are using this as evidence to say this is why Bitcoin's no good. It's actually evidence why it is good.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be fighting as if they weren't scared.
Yeah, because even I'm trying to steel man their argument to go, why would they have increased the price of energy just for Bitcoin miners? And the only answer I can get is that the energy is scarce in this country and they want it to be somewhere else, so they're pricing them out. But reading the article, energy isn't scarce in Paraguay. They have an abundance. They have enough for their residential like energy needs. So they're just doing this to spite Bitcoin. Yeah, it's the only thing that's left on the table. They're just doing it to try and kill an industry and essentially make it not profitable. And this is one of the attacks, right? It's as we always know, taxation is where governments, they're the only ones that we just pay people money for no reason, right? It's very bizarre. You set up a company, you earn money as an individual, and we all just know that you have to pay a tax. And it just goes to the government. They don't really tell you what it's for, or the fact that you might have paid £1,000 one year and then £1 million another year. You don't get more or less for your service. It's the same. Just, you earned more, so we taxed you more. And so it's this magic thing that just exists in our lives. And this is how they come for you. This is where the aggression comes, because they can just raise the percent of that taxation can just rise and fall however they want, depending on which industries they want to succeed, which ones they want to fail, because they're desperate for the free market just not to exist. They want the market that the government wants to exist. And
they basically want to form a socialism, but realize that socialism doesn't work, is what it comes down to. They're desperate for what's it called, the free money system, so they can rein you in, but you get free services, they keep you locked in. They want to have the sectors take off, which they allow. They want the company, so basically it's socialism, but they realize that basically cripples a country, so they need to leave some element of free market.
There you have it.
Sweet. Should we move on to some
let's do it.
Inflation Weekly?
Did you see his face just smile then? The second he said Inflation Weekly.
I haven't got a lot written on this one, but it's a debt ceiling, isn't it, this story? So they've raised the debt ceiling again. And I just load up the story to make sure I'm talking about the right one. But it's with a debt ceiling, I never understand this. It's like, this is the maximum which we can borrow. Well, I know it isn't the debt ceiling, this is the interest. Sorry, I've got mixed up on stories.
Yeah.
So it seems fine. Everything's fine.
Let's go for it.
I think this is someone who I spotted. At the moment, the interest expense on the national debt of the US is $475 billion, and that was while the average interest rate was 1.9%. Now the rates are 4 to 5%. That could cause the interest to be $1 trillion. So to put that into context, you've got to think, well, how much money are they bringing in terms of taxes? So I've shared another link within our chat just to show this. And it is 6.22. No, sorry, I'm wrong. It's 4.71 trillion. So after reading that, I thought, well, that sounds all right. It's only 1 trillion, and they're making almost 7 trillion. But sorry, they're making 4.71. I basically ruined the next point. But how much are they spending? 6.22 trillion, so 1.5 trillion over budget. So that is an extra 25% on top of what they actually rake in just in taxes. This is, so they're already in debt, and if we're 1.5 over and almost 0.5 is interest, you've got another double on that. So it's upping it to 2 trillion overspending every year. And obviously, as we go year on year, as your expenses get bigger and the value of the dollar gets smaller, you're going to end up with that figure going up and up. So the spending is going to keep on going up and up. And it is, as this woman pointed out, it's how you get to hyperinflation. And I think there's some people in here who just really don't understand it. Do you intentionally post this garbage for engagement? If not, the CFA is losing some serious value. Great way to build a following, I guess. they obviously just don't understand this because it's 500 extra billion. So it's going to keep on building up and up and up and up and up and up. And at some point, it is going to be that flip over to hyperinflation. And I think this kind of runs into the next story a little bit. So I won't touch too much onto this, but I think my point, which I got mixed up on because it was in my notes, is if the debt ceiling can be raised twice in a year, something's really not right. And then compound it with this. Like, how can you raise the debt ceiling? How are you so out controlling your spending? You have to raise the debt ceiling twice in a year. And now the interest rate is just going to wreck you.
Yeah, because this is what we've been looking at. I've been worried about people that just have run-of-the-mill mortgages, right? Because suddenly, once people come off these variable, like these fixed rates, and they go onto variable, or they renegotiate their mortgage rate, they're going to have a hell of a surprise. Because in the last 10, 20 years, the interest rates have been quite below 2%, which is what the US national debt has been. But now rates are 4, 5, and that's 4, 5 for a country. For an individual, you're probably thinking more like double that. And yeah, just so the GDP for the US is 23 trillion. So that's the entire gross domestic product for the US. Like, that's everything, every single hour of work. If you add all that together of every US citizen, you get to 23 trillion. They're paying 1 trillion just in interest on their debt. This is nuts.
Fact is they also can't tax a whole 20 trillion. So it's not like that 20 trillion can be absorbed into the government unless they start taking over assets. And that's when you start getting fight back.
And this is just the interest, right? So you have to pay the trillion just to keep yourself the same level of debt. Really, you should be paying 2 trillion, 3 trillion per year to start making a dent in the debt. This is how ridiculous the situation is.
Well, and this is where we're going to get to in terms of hyperinflation, really, because as we know, the only way that they are going to be able to do this is to borrow, print more money to get themselves out of it. I don't know if you guys have ever. I think you may have, Dr. Evil 10%. Is it the creature from Jekyll Island?
It's on my list.
Yeah, it's on my list. But essentially, this is probably the end game of the Fed, essentially. But it's ruining the country because ultimately they could just wipe this debt out because this debt is kind of like their own debt. Or will they try and raise rates on countries who owe them money to try and get rid of this debt? Because that would be a smarter tactic.
But they'll never have any intention of wiping the debt out because it eliminates the whole point about, over-promising, overspending, siphoning off money, because the system isn't designed to be fair, just and fair. The system is designed to siphon real assets off, so you gold and property. Because otherwise, we'd still be in a gold standard.
Because who's the interest being paid to, right? Like, where is
exactly?
Like, what?
Yeah.
In what world? Where does the $1 trillion get paid in interest to? Yeah. It's other countries, other governments, other banks, right? And then guess what? The US have the same scam out against other countries, so they're paying $1 trillion back. It's just it's money laundering.
It's just a pile of nonsense, and
so is there no end? And so
it falls apart at some point. Like, this is why.
But does it fall apart, or does the number just continue to go up?
I think it evolves into the next stage, which is the CBDCs, and they try and eliminate any kind of view which the public can have from the money because they've already cut up the M2 printing. So we can't see roughly what the money supply is going up in the US. The UK, I don't think it's ever been exposed, but the US, it was exposed until about a year ago when they cut it off. And now they're cutting off inflation statistics to in year. So you can't compare against the previous year, so literally a month on month.
It is an interesting argument, though, to go, does it matter? Like, how many dollars, how many pounds there are? Because we're obviously living in new times, aren't we? Where it's one of those things that how many people know how many pounds exist? Probably no one. Like you said, it's not even public.
Well, someone does, because things like gas, electricity, oil follow the amount of pounds and dollars printed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
it's one of them where does it matter? Like, because it's obviously I'm just playing devil's advocate here. They're printing infinite money in pounds and in dollars, but at the moment we're still, even at 10 to 20% inflation, we're still keeping up, right? And it's just people are just playing the game and going, okay. But I think in reality, what always ends up happening is, and we've seen this in every government that has ended up hitting hyperinflation, they do go through the same model, which eventually they have to keep printing such huge amounts of money because I think one of the main reasons is they employ so much of the population. So as they print money, it devalues obviously the overall currency. They have to keep printing more to pay their employees, pay their armies, and eventually they just lose control of the money. It just goes into hyperinflation.
You know, what I was trying to hint at before was, I suppose the elite as such, they know what's being printed. And therefore they know what to hike their prices by, which does fall down. Now, if those products were shared amongst the population, it wasn't so obvious to how much money was being printed, it wouldn't be so obvious to the people. Because, you know, like the price of chicken, ice cream, petrol, loaf of bread, it wouldn't go up as much. But you kind of got that filter down effect, which is going from oil goes up because whoever owns that. Gas goes up, which we've seen massively. Then you've got whatever, and then it kind of flows down to the next product, So you kind of got the transport, you got the machines and whatever else, and it feeds down. And therefore, everything which we're consuming is going up, but at different rates. So literally, gas will be the first one, and then bang, what will be the next one, then the next one. So we're seeing that. And I think, you know, what you're talking about is, it just seems like it's only a few years away, but we're going to go this route. I just don't see how it's going to come out unless it's CBDCs and they somehow come to an agreement to wipe out debts across the world and then start the merry-go-round again and wait for it to build up to an unsustainable level. But it's how do you put those controls in place to stop oil, gas, and those kind of like, you know, almost like primary investment vehicles going up.
Yeah, because but the problem is they literally can't, right? Even if they get rid of all the debt, it's literally it's like running a company, but you're losing money every single year, but you're getting VC funding that just keeps you going. And eventually that the VC funding gets to such a huge number that you just go, this isn't like we're raising more money every year than we have in total value of our entire country, right? And it's just, that's when people start to go, hold on. Because it's all about like literally the value of money. Really, it's a belief system, as we've always said. It's because the scarcity of an asset and all that kind of stuff only really matters if people believe in it. So the reason why fiat is, it's essentially infinite. Like nearly everybody that holds fiat knows that fiat is just how much the Bank of England, like in the UK, decide to print. They could print another trillion tomorrow, but most people in the UK hold a shit ton of fiat. And we just go, that's okay. I know the scarcity of this thing is infinite, but I believe in it. And I'm going to trade in it. I'm going to transact in it. And I'm happy to receive my wages in it. When it really stops is when the individual people go, I don't want to hold this anymore. I want to offload this and I want to buy something else. That's when the collapse really happens. So it's like every single kind of model you've ever seen. It's like slowly, then all at once. And I think that's the way nearly all currencies, because that's why like most people get wrecked, because it's like everyone sees the warning signs and then suddenly 10 years of build up, it happens in a month. And everyone's like, fuck, I didn't think it was going to happen then. You're like, well, you all kind of lost faith at the same time and you all started switching from one currency to another. And guess what? When you were selling that currency, no one else fucking wanted to buy it. So, and that's what we kind of need. We need like the masses just to lose faith in the US dollar, in the pound, and in the euro.
But we've been so brainwashed that this is normal. You know, we don't teach a history of money, so all the generations coming through and ever come through, they don't know about gold backed.
I do think though
it's like a
people
legend.
are losing. I do think people are losing faith in the fact that it's hurting their pockets more and more.
But that's great.
But people are losing faith because you can see the number of strikes that are happening in society.
But that's because
right
the government, the Conservatives are America for rich people.
And that faith is continuing to be lost. And, you know, they'll get paid a little bit more because the strikes will work. And then
that's because Labour help us with the unions.
And then they'll be back at the tables again, whether Labour is in power or whether the Conservatives are in power or another.
You're saying it's like a rational. You're saying like this, like a rational and educated person. The majority of people are not, and that I just don't know what the event is going to be. I just don't think we're that close to it. Literally, they could, have snow blowing through their house and be eating a can of 20-year-old beans, and they still be saying the government will help us. And the government didn't cause this. I keep on having these recent arguments with my dad about it. And, I've realised how far I've gone down a rabbit hole when I have these conversations. I'm just like mid-conversation go, my God, I'm turning into Mr. All In. What is wrong with me?
Yeah, everything he's going, I bet you don't even think freaking 9/11 was real. Voila.
But I think everything that you said is right, but I just struggled to see that event. And I have been thinking that CBDCs will be a way to control this, because you'll stop the prices of things going up, because you'll be able to say, no one can spend their money on eggs until you bring the price of eggs down, behave. But you can't do that to oil companies. You can't do that to gas, because they are owned by the top dogs, and they'll be like, fuck off. So how do you keep them down in order to keep the rest of the economy fitting with your scan?
Yeah. I mean, also, I just had a thought. So, there's like the new iPhone. I don't know what we're on now, iPhone 14. The way you're talking right now, we may have to change your name to Dr. Evil 11%. You're going up in models because you're getting more and more bullish.
I'm not revealing my real number.
Yeah. As the pods go on, you are transforming.
Dr. Evil All In.
Yeah.
Dr. Evil 100%.
I'll become Sir Everlook because I'll never stop looking, and you'll become Dr. Evil 100%.
Yeah, by the way, I know you just mentioned just like chickens and stuff. It's like, have you seen, like, obviously I mentioned before, propaganda against having your own log burner, which clearly is, they want to disincentivize you buying wood to burn it. They were talking.
That's because you're boiling the oceans, isn't it? And you're releasing too much CO2.
Yeah, they literally had on this little article. I watched it. I hate watched it just to go, where's this going? And they had some asthma kid on there, like, that would barely breathe, and she was like, yeah, someone down the road that has a log burner, and sometimes it comes in through the vents, and we have to put his pajamas in the vent, and otherwise he wakes up wheezing. And you just go, where have you found these? Like, what the fucking hell? And literally, you just got people that, they even mentioned the fact that the cost of energy has gone up by so much. People are starting to buy wood instead. And obviously, there's wood in people's gardens. You can source it however you want. And they are heating their homes much more cost effectively. Yeah. And they're going, but these are the consequences of this. And you just go, so you're totally forgetting the fact that these families potentially would have been freezing to death. Instead, they are heating their homes economically.
Because you doubled the price of electricity and gas. Yeah.
No, there's even better propaganda in the US. They're doing it about gas stoves. So they're trying to move you purely electricity, so electric hobs, because gas is so expensive. Therefore, you should use electric. And it was like asthma. It was other things which are raising as consequences. It's just like, we've been using gas in the house since, what, the 50s?
Yeah. But exactly. And then the latest one has been chickens. So they're going, don't own your
fuck a chicken.
Because they're happy with fucking chickens. They just don't want you to eat their eggs, unfertilized. But they've literally, because there's obviously been egg shortages in various countries around the world. So people have reacted to that, which people are good at reacting and going, well, I'll just have my own couple of chickens. I shove them in the garden, got my own unlimited supply of eggs.
There's no harm to that, surely.
Oh man, they have fucking loads. So they're going, the eggs will kill you. They'll have freaking Ebola in there. No, it's E. coli or something like that. They've gone, obviously the chickens are bad for the environment. They're not going to lay for very long. They're going to spread disease.
They lay for a few years when you can eat them.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so an average chicken will live to about 7 to 10 years. They'll lay really well for 3 to 5, and if at that point you can just keep them as pets, or you can kill them and eat them, and then you just keep going, right? It's the cheapest way of getting eggs that you will ever have. Like, you'll just give them a bit of grain every day, and they'll give you an egg a day for about 3 to 5 years. And just watching this video, and weirdly, it was this guy that I've been watching.
Was it US propaganda or UK?
This was actually New Zealand propaganda.
Oh, that's Gollum.
Yeah, the Gollum that is now no longer to be seen. Because I watched this guy called like the Self-Sustained Life or something. I've been watching him for the last couple of months. He just grows everything. He's what I aspire to be. He's like the OG as I see it. And he put out a video that went, "Don't have chickens for these reasons." I'm like, what the fucking hell is this guy doing? And I clicked on it, and he just went through the latest government recommendations and just went, what a load of bollocks each and every one was. And he just went through each and every category. And you just, obviously, the only reason I raise it is you zoom out, right? You just zoom out of all this and you go, they don't want you using your own source of fuel for energy. They don't want you to use any form of kind of food production for yourself. They want you to be so highly reliant on the supermarket. And the supermarket, I think at this point, supermarkets have just consolidated to such a point. They're an extension of government. So you're essentially completely relying on it, because if they want any type of shortage, they could just cause that shortage overnight. They just go, stop putting eggs out. It's just, and then suddenly there's an egg shortage, right? And it's just fucking scary seeing this.
What we need to do is, we need to take the time to go through the manifestos of these governments, and everything that they are saying is wrong, like this, just double down on it, because that's probably the right thing to do. As we were saying previously before, for every attack on Bitcoin, it makes us, via the government, this is, and them saying not to get involved with Bitcoin, don't hold it, blah, 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 and, it's bad, it's for the environment, so forth. Just take that as that's a buy signal.
Yeah. So at the moment, get a log burner and get some chickens.
Yeah.
Because literally, if you'd had a log burner, right, you could go for a drive and find some wood, couldn't you? Go out with an axe, you'd come back with some wood, you'd find it fucking somewhere, you'd slam a tree down at some point, give it a little chop, and you could heat your home. And if you've got chickens, like in the eggs are such a good source of protein. If you had a little vegetable garden plus some eggs, you could live for years on that. And they don't want you to be in that position. So get yourself in that position. Fuck them. Isn't it a coincidence that I've spent the last 3 days clearing out a chicken coop and trying to rebuild one? So I'm going to have some chickens on the land soon.
You're going to be fucking some chickens.
Fucking them chickens all day. They're gonna be some fertilized eggs, baby.
Your missus will be like, Mr. Olin, this isn't how you fertilize a chicken.
I'll be incubating it. It'll be a little fucking human chicken. What the fuck's that? And I'll let them grow up. You take over the world. Chicken, man.
So we're having crispy chicken Tuesdays.
Get off my chicken and my girls.
Okay, so this is a controversial one because I always talk about the Bitcoin standard being the Mecca in terms of books and the Holy Bible of books. But the next one that I always usually mention to people is layered money, and I've spoken via email and messages to Nick a number of times, and he's just recently come out with an article from his Bitcoin Layer kind of subscription, and he believes that the dollar is not going anywhere and that the dollar dying is a meme. And it's a whole thread around why the importance of the US dollar to the world backs this argument. What I really liked about it is the article had the voiceover. I don't know if you guys did this as well.
No, I just read it.
I listened and read at the same time. Got double stimulus in terms of auditory and visual. But Joe Consulting, real good guy in terms of the charts. I've seen a couple of his charts previously. But as the article goes through, makes the case that the world cannot live without the US dollar. So it'd be good to get your thoughts on it, because I've got something else afterwards which kind of retorts this. But
the problem is, right, he starts off, right, he's trying to say that, oh, people have said it forever and the dollar hasn't died yet. But like, we've been saying it for a while, okay, but the dollar only really became corrupt and completely irregulated since 1971. So we're pretty much just over the 50th anniversary of that. And then, I hate to say it, but what really invalidated his argument for me was he then just went, oh, in China and Russia, he used them as obviously the people taking over, and just invalidated completely their opportunity to take over. Just went, nah, it's not going to happen because of X, Y, Z. Which all seem to be tied back to the fact that the US is stronger. China can't do that. Russia can't do this. They're going to be restricted on that. And you just go, look, Russia have a massive monopoly on energy. China have a monopoly on manufacturing. US only have a monopoly on war. So I guess you can go to war, these guys, to try and get your value back. But to put a load of charts in here to go, oh, look at all these various things. Obviously, a lot of the charts he's put into his article, which obviously all linked, a lot of them obviously gamed, and we don't really know what the real numbers are, because it's just, these are government numbers. And obviously, the second I see a government number with US, Russia, and China in the same chart, I go, well, which government put the chart out? Right? Because if Russia put it out their top, if China put it out their top, if the US put it out their top, and obviously in all the charts he's used, they're US versions of it. I just go, what the fuck is Nick doing here? Is Nick being paid off? Is Nick now just a US government shill? Because if he believes in Bitcoin, then just about every word he wrote in this is total and utter bollocks.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see, because I like Nick.
I was wondering what everyone would think about this, because obviously I did my reading before I spoke to you guys about it. I think the one part of the article which I liked is how he talked about a global lubricant.
Version minus.
He talks about, the US this, US that, but it's, well, why does it keep on breaking debt records? Why does the debt ceiling have to keep on getting raised? The previous story, why are we talking about the interest rates going up so much? And how come there has to be an event every couple of years or 5 years where they have an excuse to print more money? It's not all stacking up. And I think he used like a snapshot of the US dollar over 1 year in reserves, rather than looking at the scale over 30, 40 years, so you can actually see the percentage of the US dollar. Because from some of our previous stories, I'm pretty sure we've discovered that the dollar in reserves has gone down in certain countries, especially like China and Russia. And the other countries like Canada have been bringing like the yen not as the main one, but as part of their stack and reducing the dollar amount again. So it's all kind of like saying it's not suddenly going to happen like this, but it's certainly starting to happen. You know, it doesn't just happen overnight. And then he quietly says that China is holding loads. He says that China is holding loads of US dollars, and then quietly says, but it's reducing. And then what have we got? Eventually, China falls into much of the same trap that Russia has, regardless of whether you like to deal in dollars. If you're going to grow as a nation, you need to be utilizing the currency that is embedded throughout all of global finance. Apart from if you're planning on replacing it by having a cozy alliance with Russia, Saudi Arabia, India, and Brazil.
BRICS.
And who are the biggest developing nations in the world? China, Brazil, India. So
yes.
Therefore, who is on the ascendancy? And then he says the proportion of FX reserves of US dollars is practically flat across 25 years. Obviously, I'm not that well educated on reserves, but shouldn't they be going up because of inflation and the fact that there's more dollars in the world? So I would have thought that reserves would have gone up because you're trying to, you know, back up more GDP rather than back up what you had 25 years ago, which will probably be well under half the amount. And when we got proponents of de-dollarization, will also point towards Russia's move to accept yen for oil as cannon fodder for the petroleum, but this is disingenuous, as it was less likely voluntary, more likely bred out of state necessity. How isn't this just how it starts once again?
Yeah.
You know, it's not overnight. I keep on saying this. Any dollar replacement must also be large and liquid enough that its daily fluctuations during trade settlement are not disrupted to the issuing nation's economic activity. Isn't this why BRICS are talking about using a metal-backed currency, Nick? You know, maybe I'm missing massive things in here because he's a smart guy and he knows more about this, but it's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
I tried to comment on his post and it goes, only paid subscribers only.
Oh, yeah.
I don't, and I ain't paying for this shit just to tell him how fucking wrong he is. It's disgusting. The whole post is, I would think this has been written by a low IQ US economist that just wants that literally started this article knowing their conclusion is the US dollar's fine. And all they did is work towards that conclusion. Because if you're not trusting and verifying, like any Bitcoiner should do, you find so many inconsistencies in this story all the way through. It's just massive US bias all the way. And he just concludes with the US dollar is fucking untouchable. It's here to stay forever. Full stop. And you go, like, even if I'm a Bitcoiner, right? Like, is Bitcoin here to stay forever? Like, no, it's absolutely not. Like, something will replace Bitcoin at some point. But based on the currencies we have today, Bitcoin beats fiat in every single metric that matters. So Bitcoin is absolutely going to beat fiat and is going to win. Is Bitcoin going to stay here forever because it's just the best thing ever? No. Eventually, once we probably evolve another couple of fucking levels down, there'll be another kind of reality that we're living in, and we're going to need a more different kind of currency. Absolutely, it's gonna move. But for him to be saying that, like, for 79 years the US dollar has been great and therefore it's going to be great forever, I look at him and I literally, all respect for Nick Papatia, it's fucking gone. Like,
because
and I'm gonna just chime in there because they don't like our thoughts on Bitcoin at all. But Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, in particular Charlie Munger, openly said he predicts.
Is this before he died?
Well, he's still alive, unless there's breaking news. Yeah. But he openly said that the death of the dollar is happening, and you wouldn't be surprised if it was to go to zero, crash and go to zero within the next 100 years. Now, naturally, that's going to happen because there's not been any fiat currency that has ever survived, and every fiat currency is going to go to zero. Now, on the back of what he said in terms of his rant about the US dollar, is, you know, he talked about inflation hitting an all-time high, and that inflation is a very serious subject, he said, and next to it, the only thing that could stop that happening was essentially a nuclear war. So, you know, that's the only other thing that would.
I don't think so. A nuclear war, but just print even more.
well, no, he said that's the only thing that could not stop it, I guess, ultimately. Okay. But he said, you know, unfortunately, the answer and the solution was putting into hard assets like physical gold. Now, we all know that that's not necessarily the case, but he's still of that opinion, since gold has been around since, you know, 550 BC in terms of people using it as a denomination and a currency. It's been obviously around for 5,000 years, but that's his take on it. So whilst they don't agree with us in terms of Bitcoin, he definitely agrees on the fact that it is going and dying a death, and a lot of principles that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have employed over the years, apart from their Bitcoin stance, has been spot on. And so I'm going to go against Nick on this one. I'm sorry, because Nick, you just lost me completely. Mm. And yeah, I don't see how the death of the dollar doesn't occur.
Yeah, because it's really worrying, right? When you're going against a Bitcoiner, like Bitcoin it's very hard to when you're in the Bitcoin world and you just go down that philosophy, it's very hard to disagree with us, right? It's just, once you're in, you're just kind of in. And it's just, so now suddenly a post by Ray Dalio, who is not a Bitcoiner, but can still see the macro environment as he sees it, and still thinks that, we're going to probably default to gold or something, or maybe China takes over.
Well, I think
his post is more accurate than Nick's.
Yeah.
Is really worrying, because we know Nick gets Bitcoin. So once you get it, once you've had the switch clicked, you kind of can't unswitch it. You can't become an idiot again. Like, you get it now. You've been awoken. You can realize that money's a scam and da-da-da-da. So for him to now essentially put out an article that looks like he's just graduated from economy class, he's 23, and he's put out this post why the US dollar can't fail, the US dollar can never fail, you go, well, unfortunately, it's the classic, you're either incompetent or complicit. And I don't think you're incompetent. So you've got to be complicit. It's a shame. We now can't listen to Nick. He's been paid for.
Yeah, that's what I kind of like conclude, that he's been bought for this. Like, it's 1 year snapshots. So obviously you can't look at the kind of like decline or growth of the other nations, because you need, 20, 30 years worth of data. But he's gone, here's 1 year. And it's just like, but what about the preceding years? And what about the estimations as well for things like reserve currencies trade? And it's just like, who's paid you and why have you taken it? Surely you don't need this.
It's a shame.
Oh, we've lost Sir Neverlook.
Yeah, you froze and then you went. Yeah, I think his internet's gone down. Unlike Blockstream, who have raised $125 million to expand their mining operations. So Blockstream, anyone doesn't know, they're probably one of the OGs in Bitcoin. Their CEO is Adam Back, who is one of the very first people to receive a transaction from Satoshi himself, largely rumored to be Satoshi himself. And they've been in mining for a while. They've raised hundreds of millions already to do mining. And yet again, they raised $125 million to go and buy yet a shit ton more miners.
It's a great bullish statement, but what I was wondering is, where are their miners located?
I know that their company is based. Oh my god!
It's Canada, their company.
Yeah, the company is based in Canada, not in the Maldives, Malta. They are based in Malta. Because I went to a Blockstream event in Malta.
What are you saying the miners are or the company?
I'm pretty sure the mining outfit is in Malta.
Yeah, because I read this one. Canada, that's a bit risky with Castro as leader.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of them. Adam Back and a lot of his because I went to a Bitcoin event hosted by Blockstream in Malta. Because just as like obviously we know in Europe, Malta is a regulation kind of almost like free zone. Like so a lot of gaming companies and all that stuff exist in Malta. So Bitcoin also exists there, kind of regulation free to a certain extent. So they just kind of like they let companies just grow and don't try and regulate them to death. So that's where Blockstream have gone. And I think, but to be fair, I think Blockstream, they've got China, Canada. So I'm pretty sure their mining operation, I think it might be US based, but I think they also have some in Malta, and they're expanding it even further. I don't think it's like it says actually they're expanding it across multiple enterprise class mining facilities. So
That's cool.
they have their mining spread out.
So spreading the risk, because that was like obviously it's a massive bullish signal that mining's getting so much investment. We covered I think 2 stories last week. One which was actually both were America, and I think one was renewables, wasn't it? And one was making sure that the rigs were more efficient. So we got this one again, multiple areas. My worry about it was based in Canada, because who knows what the fuck Trudeau will do, is dictatorship.
Yeah, no, I don't think I think we're fairly immune to the Canadian dictatorship here. It's just the only negative that I have on here is the fact that Blockstream have been out for so long, they've been mining for so long that why are they raising money? I would have thought they could just be
more miners. Now is the time. We're going to Millie.
Yeah, they look genius if they're raising debt at 2 to 5%, and then Bitcoin goes 1,000%. They'll look like geniuses. So maybe.
And then we're left with the poorest countries in the world, being Paraguay, India, and whatever shitholes outlawed it.
Sweet. We move on to
are you guys familiar with this website? It's pretty good, I think. The No BS Bitcoin.
Yeah, weirdly, Knobs Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Weirdly, no, I hadn't.
No,
I'd never seen it before.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not one which I've used.
Yeah, so I'm going to save it.
It's a good shout. I've started using the Carrot, now the Bitcoin magazine app, and I'm like going, ooh, I get 1 sat for reading this article, so it encourages me to read. I started playing with chess as well, but I found myself getting drawn into it. I was like, whilst I quite like the idea of this, I'm not going to play it that often unless I'm really bored. But the Bitcoin magazine app, that's a great idea. 1 sat, that could be a future weekly shop or something.
Yeah, man, it used to be when you first put that out there, it was like 30 or 40 sats, and then they reduced it so quick because obviously people just started using it like shitloads.
I think I got 500 for the first article, or the first kind of like login or something like that.
Yeah. And then it's just
Yeah, I think I'm on 3,000 or something.
3,000. Have I missed the best articles?
He's been in early.
Yeah, I've been in early.
Oh no, I lie. I've got 2,610 sats. I think that's from the initial quiz, isn't it? Ooh. Oh. Yeah, there's a couple of 5 satters here. Oh no, they're all 5 sats. Oh, fuck, it was no special ones. But yeah, good one time.
And they've rebranded the whole thing. I've got 392 sats. What the fuck have I been doing?
Loser. Oh, I think Sir Neverlook's gone again.
Oh well.
It's what happens when you're trying to stream so much porn whilst do a pod.
Yeah, it must be tough, like literally screaming 4K porn and jacking it under the desk as well.
It's got a good game face.
Not as hot as his cum face though.
Oh, okay. Now we're on the last story now. I mean, we've become a bit more streamlined going Bitcoin only, haven't we? Got rid of half the waffle, but I think there are a number of factors. Like we'll never get rid of the inflation stories because it feeds into Bitcoin, but a lot of the shitcoin stories have gone away.
Yeah. And we obviously they still filter in slightly because obviously our last story of the week is that Twitter are prepping for payments, could include Bitcoin and crypto. So when I look at this, you know, Elon obviously is a massive fan of fucking Dogecoin. So when I see Twitter going, are they going to open up payments? That sounds great. They're going to specifically.
What's it payments for? Is it like events or something like that?
Yeah, it doesn't. Obviously, this is all just rumor. No one really knows any detail. But it's just essentially, it's just going to be like, you know, why would you pay anyone, right? It's another method of payment. At the moment, we're so kind of programmed to pay someone through your bank. That's where you go. But you could go to Twitter to pay your plumber, to pay whatever. You could do it through that instead. It doesn't have to be for your bank. And if you obviously enable Bitcoin payments through Twitter, then it's like, well, if my plumber is on Twitter and I want to pay him from my Bitcoin wallet, then I could just pay him through Twitter, right? I don't need a bank. Banks are gone. We're just going to pay through social now. But obviously the super worrying thing, even though they've got Lightning enabled, because they're obviously assuming for Lightning, they're assuming small transactions. But I'm just terrified that Elon he's the Doge father, right? And he's gonna want to put fucking shitcoins in this. It's gonna be fucking sad.
I think there's also he wants to make Twitter into something bigger. You know, we've talked about this previously, and I'm not 100% trustful of Elon. Like, whilst I like him, I'm also very wary of what he's up to. Like, are we coming up with one of those super apps like they have in China? I can't remember what theirs is called, where it's social media, Ubers. Yeah, it's all kind of tied into one app. So if you misbehave on their social media, you're out of everything. And it makes him pretty much the ruler
with WeChat, you have to be invited as well. You have to be invited by somebody within WeChat. So it kind of has that groundswell.
Yeah, so I think with this one, like he's trying to replicate it. I think it could be potentially dangerous. Silence. It was like we just got a frozen face mid-com.
He's about to talk, yeah. I think that is his cum face right there.
I suppose to end, well, while we're waiting for him to come back, I think, how's your day been on, well, not your day, your week been on LinkedIn, Mr. Allin?
It's been emotional.
Been bothering people?
Yeah, been bothering people about bollocks, sexism stuff, trying to chastise people for letting their toddlers watch their phones occasionally.
Sticking up for people who don't have drives.
Yeah, people that don't have drives. I've been attacking financial advisors.
Yeah, I saw that one. He was talking about how he doesn't drink alcohol, but it's a bit of a virtue signal to get himself more notice, more business. Yeah. And your comment was, your job is a scam, by the way, drink or no drink. Trading stocks is a scam, says the Bitcoiner. Yes, trading is a scam. All financial planners are leeches trying to take 1-2% every year. 1-2%, it's more like 5%. Just to put your money in a Vanguard or trap the S&P and pretend they're managing your portfolio. Doesn't surprise me a bottom feeder doesn't understand Bitcoin. Separating money from state is a little loftier goal than scamming Betty out of the pension money.
Sometimes I just don't know where I get this gold from. I'm just like...
myself and one of the listeners send each other screenshots when we see them on LinkedIn.
Literally, my main enjoyment about posting on LinkedIn is just getting sent the screenshots from people that go lol afterwards, because no one likes or comments on it because they can't. Obviously, they're tied to a company, but I get it screenshotted and sent to me. What was it? I can't remember why I called some guy a racist. Oh, that was the driveway one, wasn't it? I had that one sent to me about 3 or 4 times because, so someone's taken a photo of some skip part.
Here we go.
Go on, read that one out.
Walking to a meeting this afternoon, and I saw this on a pavement. ... When you see this sort of behaviour, I can assume it's either then it's says see more. So he's just blah 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 saying you can't walk along a pavement, and instead you have to walk along.
Yeah, he's just upset the fact there's a skip.
So I'd like to say this is what is he? Dilapidations and technical due diligence expert. So it actually is something to do with housing, but it's on a housing estate.
Yeah.
So this is on a not busy housing estate where the skip is, so it is proper virtue signaling.
Yeah.
Your response is some people need skips that don't need massive driveway. Some people need skips that don't have massive driveways. You're flexing your hashtag driveway privilege, which basically makes you a racist. Your P45 is on its way.
Oh man, I'm trying to like be edgy plus woke plus funny. Oh man. I got sent that screenshot about 4 times, being like, haha, for fuck's sake. Like, what are you doing? But it's just like, what the fuck, man? Like, people are getting upset about someone having a skip, like they're trying to do this, they've probably got an extension, they're trying to do their garden, like, leave them alone. Walk around the skip, you fucking asshole. Anyway.
I thought we'd end our week on that. Whilst we wait for Sarah Neverlook to come back.
Yeah,
I've got internet issues.
Oh, can you end it verbally, because we can't see you physically? But
I mean, I'm here. I just don't want the bandwidth to drop out once again. So I will try. So I'll do it.
Get us out of here.
This has been pod number 84, brought to you by the one and only Mr. All-In, aka the $1 Trillion Man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the motherfucker with internet issues, also known as the Excellence of Execution, and Mrs. No Show, aka
our diversity hire.
Mrs. ESG. Peace.